Now, it's also my pleasure then to call our own President, Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa, who is our champion for equality of access to vaccines on our continent, amongst many other things that he has been championing at this point in time. Mongameli, it's your turn now for your statement and your response. Let's give him an appropriate welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Program Director, Minister Emmanuel. Played in Zimande. Your Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, and Minister of Health of the Federal Republic of Germany, who has also honored us by traveling all the way from Germany to be present here, Mr. Jens Spahn. Ministers from South Africa who are here with us today, and deputy ministers, and the ambassador of France, as well as his counterpart, the ambassador of South Africa to France, and the ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany, Mr. Martin Schäfer. And of course, we're delighted that we've been welcomed by the Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, which has 55,000 students. He was telling me and boasting about it. Professor Tawana Kupe. And I'm also delighted to have here in our meeting, the seminar, Dr. John Nkengasong, who is the leader of the Africa Center for Disease Control, Prevention, the chair of the South African Health Products Regulatory Body, the authority, Professor Helen Rees. And of course, we had the CEO of SAPRA speaking earlier, and the CEO of BioVac, Dr. Morena Makwana. We already heard him. And the CEO of Aspen Pharmacare, Stephen Saad, as well as the chairman of Aspen Pharmacare, Mr. Husseini Dlamini, and members of the diplomatic community who are here with us, who have joined us, and representatives of the scientific community and academia who have come in large numbers. We're delighted. And representatives of business and industry, and I think there's also the Student Representative Council here of this university, and members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to begin by thanking the University of Pretoria for organizing this wonderful seminar on vaccines, particularly the manufacturing of vaccines on our continent. This seminar, President Macron, provides us a very vivid, in my view, demonstration that there is capacity in this country and expertise and experience to manufacture, but this capacity also goes beyond South Africa, as a number of other African countries have also over time developed their own capacity. And I very much liked hearing what Dr. Stephen Saad was saying, as he should know, as the CEO of Aspen, that they would like to collaborate with a number of other countries on the African continent, proving to me once again that there is capacity on the African continent as well. And this capacity is there, and it operates at the high efficiency level, as well as being able to adhere to the strictest standards of safety and quality in developing the vaccines, and would be able to do so. And as such, I would say South Africa is not alone, because there are several others on our continent. And some of them, if they can be named, you know, when I was in Paris at the wonderful summit that President Macron organized on financing African economies, one of the things that I heard was that, no, we just want to focus on 3 countries on the continent, which is South Africa, Senegal, and Rwanda. And it occurred to me then that this was flawed thinking, because there are other countries that do have the capacity and which can gear up to even greater capacity within a short space of time. And that is what prompted me to say the countries of Europe, or the northern countries, must not tell us what is good for us. They must listen to us, because we know what is good for ourselves. And I'm pleased that we have amongst us, you know, President Macron, who takes the trouble to listen and to take in views from other people and other leaders. And that is why we often say President Macron advocates Africa's cause more than many. And he is a real champion for Africa. And I'd like us to applaud him for that, because that's what he does. So other countries that, at the top of my head, I can think of who will have the capacity and who have it is countries like Egypt, Morocco, Kenya, and Ghana. They just are rearing to go, and we need to give them that opportunity. We do have experience in producing vaccines here in this country, and we have ecosystems in place to support their production, and we heard earlier from a number of our speakers here. There is, however, one thing that the African continent cannot do. We cannot continue to wait in the queue for life-saving COVID-19 vaccines. We are waiting in the queue, and we are tired of waiting in the queue. We want to be at the front of the queue, and this must happen now. Because the longer we wait, the more lives we put at risk. I mean, if you look at the figures now, and I'll touch on some of them, we are right at the bottom. From the outset of this pandemic, Africa's response has been unified, it's been coordinated, it's been comprehensive, it has been underpinned by solidarity, and it has been well informed and well led. Right at the beginning, as the pandemic occurred, and we were very fortunate to have people like Dr. John Kengasong, who heads our Africa Center for Disease Control. He was in place at the right time. He'd come from Washington, right at the right spot. And we immediately, as the pandemic broke, developed a strategy for the whole continent. Strategy which he drove, and we had a great strategy, and which we spread around the continent, and a vast continent of 1.2 billion people, that this is the way we should address this pandemic. And thereafter, as we were running all over the world, trying to get PPEs, because all of a sudden we knew we needed masks, we needed all manner of things that could defend us against the pandemic. We suddenly found that many countries in the north had bought all the PPEs, and supplies were short, and we were competing amongst ourselves as Africans, and we were paying high prices. We immediately came up with the idea that let us set up the African Medical Supplies Platform, and we appointed Strive Masiyiwa from Zimbabwe to be the key person who would head this up. Working with Dr. John Kangasong, they set up this platform, a platform that brought together various suppliers. And we thought it would just be limited to suppliers in the north and China and so forth. All of a sudden, many suppliers on the African continent started coming up from the woodworks. They also registered on the platform and started selling. A number of those from South Africa sold up to, Minister Patel was telling me that they sold up to 2 billion of PPE products on that platform. Prices had been equalized, and supply was properly determined throughout. And we started getting inquiries from the Caribbean. The Caribbean, as we all know, is the 6th region of our continent, and our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean started also purchasing from this platform because it had made things a lot easier for us. Now, the Africa CDC has played an important role in the continental response, ensuring that we can pool resources as well as expertise. Currently, the Africa CDC is also supporting a number of member states, up to 26, which would be almost half of the members we have on the continent, with things such as oxygen concentrators and accessories. Now, the CDC came into its own during this pandemic and has done fantastic work. Last year, we set up also, as the vaccines became more accessible and available, we realized that Africa would be left behind unless we set up a structure, which President Macron has also referred to, which is the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team, which is led by Mr. Strive Masiyiwa, so that we can have transparency, we can also have accountability on the availability of vaccines throughout the continent. Now, President Macron, you said you need information. Information is needed on what the requirements are of the continent when it comes to vaccines. That has already been done. The AVAT facility did precisely that, and they did it. Dr. John Kangasong is here. They did it so scientifically. They took the whole continent and did a proper scientific calibration of what every country will need to reach 60% immunity. And it was right to the last person who should be vaccinated. The figures are there. I was actually quite amazed, positively amazed, when I saw the figures that the arithmetic or the maths that they had done. So it is there. It has been properly calibrated, and it's all transparent. Nigeria knows what they should get. South Africa knows what we should get in the form of vaccines. But at the AVAT level, we were also able to organize the funding, because many vaccine manufacturers wanted their money upfront. And we organized a fund of $2 billion so that we could acquire a sizable number of vaccines, and that money was paid to manufacturers. But this is where the challenge then came in for us, but maybe I'll deal with it in a while. So we've done excellent work when it comes to that, but we've also cooperated with COVAX, the COVAX facility, as well as we've been negotiating with a number of these manufacturers as Africa CDC. Now, as African countries, we are immensely grateful to the solidarity display that we've seen around the world. And when it comes to a country like France, for its own ongoing support for Africa's vaccine acquisition. We're grateful for that. We welcome France's recent contribution of an additional 30 million doses to COVAX, working together with Germany, and 500 million euros in multilateral funds to buy diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines. We're grateful for that. Now, despite these and other contributions, vaccine coverage just on the African continent is just 2%. To date, less than half of 1% of the continent's population is fully vaccinated. Access is our biggest and the most dangerous challenge. Vaccines are flooding into upper income countries, but they're just trickling into Africa, even as we speak now. This runs completely contrary to our aspirations to build a world founded on human rights for all, where there is universal access to vaccines by all the peoples of the world who need to be vaccinated. It also undermines the global effort to defeat this virus. For as long as the virus continues to spread in one part of the world, it remains a threat to the whole world. And we know how this virus started spreading. It started spreading from one location in the world, and in no time it engulfed the whole world. So if we run into little corners and say we will contain it here through vaccinations and leave other parts, we are actually just working backwards. Undertakings to donate excess vaccines doses to low-income countries are welcome. We welcome them, we must say upfront. But they are unlikely to make up the shortfall in global vaccine production capacity. To successfully break transmission, we are going to need billions of doses to vaccinate a sufficient number of people, mainly in developing countries. We therefore commend more than 100 countries that have to date supported the proposal that we have put forward, which will help us address this problem with regard to the TRIPS waiver. This is the most practical route that we believe we have to address Africa's vaccine shortages in the short to the medium term. We note that resistance to the waiver proposal is coming from wealthier countries that have already secured more than 75% of available vaccines. We note that. And of course, President Macron has sort of dissected the problem even a lot further by saying that the resistance is coming from those who believe that they have innovated, and having innovated, they just don't want to let their innovation just go for either for free or just to be given to anyone. But we are saying we are at war. We are waging a war, a global war, and there's only one enemy. The one enemy that we all have to defeat requires that for a set time frame that we should allow further production of vaccines, because as it is now, the vaccines that have been produced, even by those who say they've innovated, are not enough to cover all of us. We've got 1.2 billion people on our African continent. Yes, 60% of them need to be vaccinated. It's a huge number. And the production of the vaccines is just not living up to the numbers we need. Even here in South Africa, we are still hamstrung, held back by just the numbers that are not there. Even Stephen Saad, the CEO of Aspen, will tell you that yes, they can make so many, even if they make 1 million a day or whatever, but in the end, we still need more and more vaccines. And it is for this reason that we say alternative approaches to access have to be found, and we've suggested those. They include vaccine sharing and donation and establishing medicine patent pools. Some have also called on developing countries to use existing TRIPS flexibilities to address intellectual property barriers, the vaccine waiver, so that the WTO is able to process the matter as quickly as possible, so that we can talk to our colleagues at the G7 meeting as well as the G20. And in doing so, we will be seeking to get them to agree that we are at war. We've got one enemy, the issue of innovation. One understands it, and we are not against innovation. We are not even beginning to challenge the innovation issue. We say, let us work together to have this waiver for a limited period. That in itself is not going to break the innovation concept, and all it requires is that there should be more access. And if saving lives is important to all of us, this is not too much to ask. And it is for this reason that we say that waiver proposal that has now been supported by so many other countries needs to be put firmly on the WTO agenda so that it is approved. And on this, we are not going to retreat, because for us to retreat means that we are saying our people's lives are not worth much. The lives of our people are worth a great deal. And we do this because we want to save our people's lives. And we're therefore going to continue insisting that this waiver should be there, so that the capacity that resides in our various countries, however much long it takes, should be activated so that the vaccines can be produced. Now, today, at this seminar, we've just heard from the people who are in the business, who say, once this can be permitted and allowed, they will be able, yes, to have manufacturing bases in a number of places. And finance is not necessarily the problem, because once the waiver has been agreed to, those entities will have business cases which they can go and either borrow money against and be able to get up and running. So as South Africa, we reaffirm our commitment to achieving a balanced outcome that takes the interests of all into account. And we would want the world to also approach this matter in the same form. The discussions that we should have should continue to be held in good faith, to be solutions-oriented, and the negotiations must also take place at the WTO, as President Macron has said, and they should be based on the texts that should now be crafted. The solidarity displayed by the international community since the pandemic broke out has been laudable. It has really assisted many countries that would never have had the capacity to address this pandemic. And we want to see it continuing through support for the WTO proposal. A temporary TRIPS waiver will not just enable us to save lives, as I said, in the short term, in the medium term, but it will also assist us in building that capacity. It will also support the Africa Vaccines Manufacturing Partnership in equipping us to deal with future health emergencies. And President Macron is right when he says we need, as we address this, to deal with the health capacity on the continent as well. Manufacturing vaccines locally is an important step towards African self-reliance and will help us to meet our developmental aspirations. There is existing capacity globally that can be leveraged to ramp up production in the countries of the South. By some estimates, current production capacity of around 3.25 billion doses could be ramped up to 5 billion doses annually. For South Africa's part, we have demonstrated capability in the form of BioVac as well as Aspen, as we had today. It is, however, a sector that is in development. Much of our local manufacturing capacity is centered on formulation, fill and finish, as we had, using imported active pharmaceutical ingredients, the packaging and the cold chain distribution. We are developing a local manufacturing plan to produce vaccines locally through strategic partnerships and technology transfer. Our goal in the end is to cover the entire vaccine production value chain by upgrading existing capacity and bringing new capacity on board. We want to establish new pharmaceutical manufacturing companies that will be able to produce COVID-19 vaccines and other vaccines. We already have what in South Africa we call a Black Industrialist Program to enable those who want to get into this business to become entrants of the vaccine manufacturing process. Now, emerging African manufacturers need technology partners that will help develop their skills base and assist with technology transfer. Now, technology transfer is therefore absolutely important because those countries on the continent, they need to make markets of their own. This requires a commitment for multilateral procurement agencies and donor funders to procure vaccines and medicines from African manufacturers in sustainable volumes. We would like the northern economy countries, be they France, be they America, be they Norway, yes, to purchase vaccines that are made here in Africa so that we make those vaccine manufacturers sustainable. Aspen is one of those. It's a global company, and we are proud of Aspen that they are already manufacturing vaccines and exporting them even to Europe. We will continue to rely on the support of the international community, I must say, particularly partners that we have like France and Germany. We will also need the support of industry for investment, capacity building, intellectual property, and technology transfer. I want to make a call to multinational pharmaceutical companies to reconsider their opposition to this TRIPS waiver. 20 years ago, President Macron referred to this. When South Africa was in the grip of HIV pandemic, we were sued by pharmaceutical manufacturers over access to and manufacturing of antiretroviral medication. By abandoning their legal action then, the manufacturers decided to put people before profits. And that made the whole world enter a new situation with regard to dealing with HIV/AIDS. And they still continue to make money. It paved the way for South Africa and other developing countries to have access to life-saving medication. And we say this is another time where lives have got to be put ahead of the massive profits that can be made for a set period, so that we are able to deal with the COVID-19 and defeat it. This is not about undermining incentives for research or innovation and development. It is about collaborating to save lives. Research into COVID-19 vaccine was the product of international collaboration with significant financial support from the public sector. We agree with that. A number of clinical trials were conducted in developing countries or in developing economies. They came here to even South Africa and a number of countries to come and test these vaccines. And once they have tested them, they say, thank you very much. We now know they are very successful. We're going to use it on our own people in the north. And you will see for yourselves. Goodbye, and off they go. Now, we can't accept that. That is unacceptable. Allowing all countries to manufacture their own vaccines is not about developed countries or pharmaceutical companies extending their largesse to us. This is a matter of social justice. It is a matter of human rights, the most important of them being the right to life. So, Your Excellency, President Macron, we are delighted that you are here, and we welcome your announcement on support for vaccine manufacturing in our country and on the continent. We are immensely encouraged by the French government's support for South Africa's science and innovation research in the form of expertise, development, study scholarships, funding, and tech transfer. And I'm particularly delighted that you're focusing also on human capital, particularly young people. We are also encouraged by the most recent investment commitments by French companies, which will greatly boost our economy and create a number of jobs. I'd like to say this to you in your presence, that we are immensely grateful. We also appreciate past investment pledges that were made during our investment conferences by a number of French companies. We also extend our gratitude to the Federal Republic of Germany for its support for this initiative to boost South Africa's vaccine manufacturing capability. On behalf of the Republic of South Africa, we also thank Germany for its generous donation of ventilators and medical equipment to our National Institute of Communicable Diseases. So do pass on my gratitude to Angela Merkel and say, thank you very much for the help we've received. This pandemic has taught us valuable lessons. South Africa believes the international community should come together to develop a new international pact on pandemics, whether it is in the form of a treaty or an agreement. We are going to continue to face many more pandemics in the world. And it is time that we have a treaty, a protocol, and an understanding on how we are going to deal with further pandemics that are going to come. It must emphasize the new rules based on equity and solidarity. That must be upfront. It should also address sustainable financing for the World Health Organization. We must also look at how vaccine manufacturing capacity developed during COVID-19 can be repurposed for the future production of other vaccines and related technologies. More than a year since this pandemic brought devastation to countries across the world, COVID-19 vaccines present a glimmer of hope. Let us ensure that this hope is not snatched away from millions of people around the world because they were not born in a well-resourced country. And this is what it is about. Because it's the value of the life of a person who lives in Norway much more than the value of a life when we are facing a pandemic of a person who lives in Eswatini or Lesotho. As this deadly pandemic shows little signs of abating, we are in a race to save lives because we don't know when it is going to end. Now, Africa wants to do things for itself. We want to help ourselves and save our people. And this is where I join you, President Macron, where you say, correctly so, that you help to capacitate Africa so that African countries can be real sovereign states on their own, looking after the welfare of their people. Now, with the right support and collaboration, we will be able to scale up and diversify our production capabilities. We have the capability, the expertise, and the experience, I must say again, in manufacturing vaccines. Above all, we have the will to succeed, not just as South Africa, but as the entire continent. What we are asking for and what we need is the opportunity to realize this bold and noble vision. That's all we ask for as Africans. Countries in the north, yes, have developed much further than us, and their development must also be shared so that we all develop together as the world. I thank you.
Thank you very much.